I sat at my desk, the soft hum of the city drifting through the floor-to-ceiling windows behind me. My fingers brushed over the smooth leather of my chair, the one I'd fought tooth and nail to claim for myself, though ironically, it hadn't always been mine. The sunlight caught the gold threads of my silk blouse, warming my skin, and for a fleeting moment, I allowed myself to feel untouchable. At least in this office. In this moment, I was untouchable. Then my phone buzzed, cutting through the calm. A message from my cousin, Jenna, flashed on the screen. "Hope you're comfy in my old chair. Coffee later." My chest tightened, and a half-smile formed despite the spike of irritation. That chair. That stupid chair. How long had it taken me to prove I deserved more than just a seat in someone else's shadow? I leaned back, letting the leather cradle me, and thought about the countless mornings I'd arrived early, stayed late, and quietly built something no one had expected me to. No one, except maybe me. The aroma of roasted coffee beans from the office machine filled the room, mingling with the faint scent of lavender from my diffuser, grounding me. I could feel it all. The irritation, the humor, the pride, tangled together in a complicated knot. And yet, beneath it, a simmering anticipation. The day I didn't just sit in the chair, but the day I owned the office. Today, it felt like that day had finally arrived. I remember the first time Jenna took my chair. I was 22, fresh out of college, bright-eyed and determined, starting my first real job at a small marketing firm in Chicago. I had spent weeks convincing my manager to give me a permanent spot in the office, the corner by the window, the one with sunlight spilling onto the desk every morning. It wasn't just a chair. It was my claim to belonging, my foothold in a world that had always told me I was too young, too inexperienced, too soft to matter. Then she showed up, my cousin, with that infuriating, effortless confidence that seemed to make the universe bend in her favor. "Oh, this desk looks cozy," she said, sliding into the chair as if she'd owned it all along. I froze, my hands gripping the edge of my desk until my knuckles went white. "Actually, I was going to." My voice faltered. She laughed, a sound that somehow made my throat tighten. "Relax, it's just a chair. You'll find another one." It felt like more than a chair. It felt like a signal. The world wasn't going to hand me what I deserved. If I wanted it, I'd have to take it myself, or, better yet, build my own. That evening, I sat alone in my tiny apartment, my grandmother's old advice echoing in my mind. "Darling," she'd said when I'd shared my frustrations, "sometimes life doesn't give you the chair you want. So make a better one. Make the room yours, too." I traced the carved initials on the wooden letter opener she'd given me. A little gift, she said, was a reminder that I had tools inside me I hadn't yet discovered. I swallowed the lump in my throat, trying to steady my trembling hands. That night, I made a quiet vow to myself. I wouldn't just sit where I was allowed. I would create a place where no one could take my seat, where my success would be undeniable. And though it terrified me, I knew it was the only way forward. I started small. Freelance campaigns from my cramped apartment, spreadsheets spread across my kitchen table, laptop balanced precariously on stacks of notebooks. Nights blurred into mornings, the hum of my printer and the occasional honk from the street below my only companions. I kept my progress quiet. My family didn't need to know, and frankly, they didn't believe it mattered. Then I met Claire, a seasoned marketing director at a boutique agency, who saw something in me that no one else had. "You have a way of seeing things others miss," she said, leaning back in her high-backed chair during our first meeting. Her office smelled faintly of sandalwood and old books, and I remember thinking, this woman gets it. She taught me to strategize, negotiate, and, most importantly, to trust myself. There were nights I cried over spreadsheets, nights I questioned whether I was cut out for this. I made mistakes, plenty of them, from miscalculating budgets to losing potential clients to more established competitors. Every error felt magnified, every rejection like a mirror reflecting my worst insecurities. But with every small win, I felt my confidence grow. Landing my first big client, receiving a note of thanks for a campaign that exceeded expectations, seeing my bank account swell in ways I'd never imagined at 22. I started to acquire my own tools, my own chair. I rented a small office space under a vintage brick building downtown, hung framed prints that spoke to my taste, and invested in a leather chair that cradled me every time I questioned my worth. I was building not just a business, but a sanctuary, a private universe where my work and vision thrived without interference or judgment. I still kept it hidden from Jenna and the rest of my family. To them, I was doing well, nothing more. I posted modest updates on social media, smiling photos at coffee shops, carefully cropped to hide my growing empire, so they could think I was merely getting by, while in reality, I was quietly reshaping my life. Each client, each successful pitch, each late-night strategy session brought me closer to a day when I wouldn't just occupy a seat, but own the room. It wasn't easy, and it wasn't fast. But every ounce of doubt and every sleepless night became fuel. I was no longer the cousin who got brushed aside. I was becoming someone who could set the rules, define the space, and reclaim everything that was mine by right, and more than I had ever imagined. The day Jenna walked into my office, I felt a strange mix of anticipation and amusement. She had expected the same 22-year-old cousin she had dismissed years ago, maybe a young woman barely keeping her freelance projects afloat. Instead, she stepped into a space that smelled faintly of mahogany and leather, with sunlight spilling over abstract art I had collected on my travels and a large desk that dominated the room. My chair, was positioned perfectly in the center, sleek and commanding, and I sat there, composed, letting her take it all in. "Wow," she breathed, finally letting her gaze rest on me. Her lips pressed into a thin line, and her eyes darted to the nameplate on my desk. Victoria Hayes, owner and CEO. The silence stretched, the kind of silence that makes your pulse thicken in your chest. I leaned back slightly, the leather conforming to me, and watched her try to process the transformation. I didn't realize you'd. Her voice trailed, faltering. "This is your office?" "Yes," I said smoothly, letting a small smile curl at the corner of my lips. "It's mine. I own the company now." I gestured to the modern glass shelves filled with awards, client portfolios, and framed photos of my first team, people who had believed in me when no one else did. The chair? Not just mine. The whole office. Her eyes widened further, disbelief mingling with a touch of guilt. I could almost see the memory of the first stolen chair flicker behind her eyes, the same chair that had felt like a betrayal years ago. I let her stew a moment longer, savoring the weight of her surprise, before continuing. "Every campaign, every client, every late night, it added up. You laughed when you thought I wouldn't make it. You assumed my dreams were smaller than yours. But I didn't just claim a chair, Jenna. I built my own office. I built my own life." My voice softened slightly, not from mercy, but from quiet triumph, the kind that comes from knowing you fought for every inch of ground you occupy. She swallowed, nodding, and I could see it. The shock, the shame, the realization that underestimating me had been a mistake. The room itself seemed to reflect my journey, polished yet personal, professional yet alive with my touch. It was not just a reveal, it was a statement. For the first time, I felt completely visible, completely seen, not as the cousin who got brushed aside, but as a woman who had claimed everything she deserved. I stood, smoothing the folds of my blouse, and let the silence stretch a moment longer. Jenna looked like she might speak, but I raised a hand, gently but firmly. "Before you say anything, understand this. I'm not here for revenge. I'm here to set boundaries, and if you want to be part of my world now, there are conditions." Her eyes widened, and I allowed myself a small, ironic smile. The cousin who had once taken my chair was now listening to me lay down the rules. "First," I began, "you need to respect other people's space and effort. That means no assuming things are yours simply because you want them. You can't take credit for work you didn't do or undermine someone else's progress." I could see her nod, hesitant but attentive. "Second," I continued, my tone steady, "if you want to work with me, you'll pursue your own goals seriously. I'll help, but you need to bring ambition, dedication, and integrity. No half measures, no shortcuts. Her lips pressed together, and I let the pause hang, letting the weight of my words settle. Then I gestured to my office, the environment I had built from scratch. Everything you see here was earned, step by step. You can be part of it, but only if you commit to growth, not entitlement. I won't carry anyone who refuses to build themselves up. Finally, I softened my voice, just slightly. And third, you have to drop toxic habits. Gossip, resentment, jealousy, they have no place here. We all have baggage, but we can choose to carry it differently. If you want to be in my life and my space, you leave that at the door. I watched as her shoulders slumped, realization dawning. This wasn't punishment, it was guidance. Compassion tempered with authority. I had lived through the dismissals, the underestimations, and the quiet heartbreak. I wasn't here to break anyone, but I would not bend to old patterns either. Jenna nodded slowly, almost reverently. I understand. I'll do it, she whispered. Not with entitlement, but with a promise. And as I looked around my office, my sanctuary, my battlefield, my triumph, I felt the power shift fully into my hands. This wasn't just a chair or an office. It was a life I had built with sweat, tears, and unwavering belief in myself. And now, for the first time, those around me had to meet me on my terms. Weeks passed, and I watched quietly as Jenna began to change. She showed up on time, took initiative, and even celebrated the small wins she'd once dismissed. It was strange and quietly satisfying to see someone I had once resented grow alongside me. Not under me, but because she finally chose to. Others in my life began to shift too, influenced not by lectures, but by example. The environment I had built was no longer just mine. It was a space where growth and respect could flourish. I often sat in my office at the end of a long day, the same leather chair that had once symbolized stolen opportunity, now a throne of accomplishment. My grandmother's letter opener sat on my desk, gleaming in the late afternoon light. I ran my fingers over the carved initials and smiled. Softly, remembering her words, "Make a better chair. Make the room yours." I had done both, and more. I reflected on the journey. Every moment of doubt, every late night, every small victory that had compounded into the life I now led. The pain I endured was no longer a weight, but a foundation, solid and unwavering, reminding me that resilience and vision could turn even the deepest hurt into triumph. And yet, even with success, I held on to empathy. I had reclaimed my place without destroying anyone, and the transformation I saw in others reminded me that power is most beautiful when paired with grace. I had learned the true measure of strength, not the ability to take, but the courage to build, guide, and forgive. I leaned back in my chair, the city lights beginning to twinkle outside the window, and whispered to myself, a quiet affirmation for anyone listening. I claimed my seat, built my room, and owned my life, and no one can take that from me.